Dan Ashworth and Omar Barada QA on Manchester United's transfer window, Ten Hag and more. The Men was among the outlets granted access to a QA with Man United Sporting Director Dan Ashworth and Chief Executive Omar Barada. Manchester United Chief Executive Omar Barada and Sporting Director Dan Ashworth held a QA with dedicated correspondents in the Old Trafford boardroom ahead of the visit of Liverpool on Sunday. Former Manchester City Chief Operating Officer Barada started as United's new Chief Executive on July 13, while Ashworth began his role on July 1, having arrived from Newcastle United. Ashworth and Barada were on gardening leave before they started their roles at Old Trafford. The duo are the two most high-profile appointments since co-chairman Sir Jim Ratcliffe agreed a minority shareholding in United in December. Over a 20-minute on-the-record conversation, Barada and Ashworth fielded questions from journalists. Here's every word. Dan Ashworth: well, first of all, I didn't inherit it. We did at Manchester United, we're a team in all of this. So from July 1 there'd already been some decisions made about key areas of the pitch to strengthen. We'd already lost 2 or 3 key players, Varane, Martial and Amrabat, from memory had all gone, so there was a centre-back, a central midfield player, 6, and a centre-forward with a key, and we felt we probably would need another centre-back as well. They were the 4 key positions we really wanted to strengthen in this window, and we've done that by bringing in Xerxes, bringing in Ugarte, bringing in Euro and bringing in De Ligt, so that was fundamentally, as I walked in, the pre-agreed positions. Partly because of the exits and partly because of the view, they were areas we wanted to strengthen our depth and quality. Mazraoui and Wan-Bissaka was one where Aaron had a year left on his contract, had an opportunity to move on, so we were able to freshen it up and trade that position. The squad, whenever you arrive at the start of a season, you're always into those situations. Players have left, maybe there are players who want to leave, and it's about trying to execute the plan that the club had in those key positions as much as you possibly can, and I also go back to the financial rules and regulations that you rightly have to act within. So it's not just as simple as being able to change everybody, nor do we want to. It's just about making good decisions in the next few windows to maximize our resources and the talent we've already put in the squad and the talent that's coming through the system. What happened with Jadon Sancho? He was reintegrated into the squad. Started games during pre-season, came on in the Community Shield and then left. I think with any player, whether it's Jadon, whether it's Scott, McTominay, or whether it's Aaron, if there's a preference that they would like to move and go to a new club and it's right for them and it's right for us, then you have to explore it. We felt we had enough depth in that particular position to be able to cover it. We've got for really good wide decision that players. Jadon was a 5th, and it just enabled us to make the decision that, if it was good for him and good for us, it was something we were willing to consider, so there was no future for him, nothing to do with that. It was a decision that we made, if it's right for Jadon and it's right for us to move on. He wanted to explore the opportunity at Chelsea, like Scott wanted to explore the opportunity at Napoli, like Aaron wanted to explore the opportunity at West Ham. We're not in a position where we're kicking players out of the club. Are you confident of a successful season, given the squad? I like the squad, I have to say. I probably would say that after the business we've done in the summer. I've probably done 25 windows now and been doing this for a fair period of time. I don't think there's ever been a window where we've gone, oh God, it's gone absolutely perfectly, we've done every single in, we've done every single out we wanted to do. There are always bits. But in the main, the target positions we wanted to strengthen, the players we've brought in, the depth and options, when everybody is fully fit that Eric has, and we have as a club, I'm pleased with that. Yeah, how long will it take for United to get into a position City are in of tweaking the squad? Omar Barada: I think anybody who has worked in football for a long time could tell you that it's almost impossible to put a timescale to answer that question. What I can say is it has been demonstrated when you look at the teams who have been successful consistently for many years. It's because they have the right coach, they have signed the right players, they have the right structure around the coach and the players, and you need to take good decisions consistently for many years to get into a position where you are a financially sustainable club that is competing to win every single competition. Which is where we want to be. As Dan referenced earlier, we don't want to just win one Premier League and then be satisfied. We want to create a team that is capable of competing for the Champions League, for the Premier League and for the domestic cups on a consistent basis. So to build that, we need to be doing more of what we have done in this window. We have addressed priority positions that were identified very early on, as Dan has said, and we were able to do it in a financially sustainable way. We were quite disciplined about the valuations we were giving to the players who were going to come in. We stuck to those valuations. I think Dan and the team did a fantastic job in the negotiations process. And the reason I mention that is if you make a mistake and if you overspend or get a player who can cost you too much, it can set you back. Which is why you need to be able to take those decisions and make the right ones consistently over time to be in a position to win consistently. There will be some mistakes that we made, it's normal, there are certain factors we can't control. But all of the controllables, we are going to put our best foot forward to get it right. The club have sold better this summer. Was that a critical area to improve? I think where we stand today, you see lots of turnover in the squads, and in order to be able to stay within the financial regulations, to make the investments we want to make and strengthen the key positions, you have to sell, and the process for selling is very similar to the process for buying. You have a framework, you know what you are trying to achieve, it has to make sense for the club, it has to make sense obviously for the player who is leaving, and if you stay within those parameters, and if you are decisive, then generally you get it right. Were negotiations quite different, such as buyback clauses? Clearly, for the ins and outs, we had a very clear idea for what we wanted to achieve. Both in terms of the positions of the players, but also from a financial point of view. It is true that we have been more open to structuring the contracts in a way that can deliver value for us in the short term, but also in the future, introducing higher CELONS, more realistic contingents. We have done that with practically all of the players who have gone out, from the young ones to the more senior players. We have also tried to put in place certain policies to protect us in the future. So we have the ability to buy back a player. Willy Cambuala, if he does really well, then we have the ability to bring him back. And we have done that again with lots of other young players. So it's just outlining in a very simple and straightforward way what are the parameters for any negotiation. Dan and his team have done an excellent job executing the ins and outs. I think from my point of view, sometimes you have to be quite brave and make decisions that maybe you don't want to make. But you can't have a bloated squad, and you're also dealing with players that ultimately want to play football. So you want to make sure that the squad is lean, but you have enough depth. The schedule, especially with the new Europa League format, etc., is pretty punishing. So we want to make sure we've got enough depth, but we don't carry a bloated squad, and we're able to keep the players with the motivation and thought that they've got a chance of playing. If you run with too big a squad, it can cause problems. So you have to sometimes make some brave decisions on that. And the second thing, and the reason you have to make brave decisions, is because of the changes in the rules and regulations. I think we talked about that before, is that you have to churn, you have to generate some money and to be able to spend that money back out as well. From a player trading point of view, as well as from a commercial perspective, so what I think you have changed, and I've seen this written before, I'm not saying anything new, is the number of players that will be one club players there for a long period of time. I think it's probably changing within the game, and that's an unintended consequence of the rules and regulations. Would you want PSR rules changed, given the incentive to sell homegrown players? Well, I think from a player's perspective is the one thing we're forgetting in all these rules and regulations is the player's wishes as well. I don't know if I've talked about it before, but if a player has an opportunity, and Scott's been fairly open, that maybe he needed a change. He's been in Manchester United for 21 years, I think. He's been a brilliant servant. But sometimes in life you fancy a change and do something different. So we have to respect what those human beings, what they want for their career and their life as well. And if all three align, it's right for us, it's right for them, it's right for the club they're going to, then you have to look at it. I know what you're saying. I don't want to sit here and say no player is going to be a one-club person again. But the rules have, as an unintended consequence, made it slightly more attractive to sell players with a zero book value, which is consequently either players you sign on a free or players that come through your system. Just to add to that, the fundamental principle of the rules we are in favor of, which is that we need to operate sustainably. And in order to do that, it's obviously taking good football decisions, ins and outs, developing academy players that can contribute to the first team. It's also managing a good business, growing your revenues, managing your costs properly. So all of that plays into it. And we're all fundamentally in favor of that. Are you excited for the future? OB, I can sense it, and I can also speak for myself, which is I'm very excited and very optimistic at what we have in front of us. I think we're starting to put the right pieces in place, and I'm absolutely convinced that we're going to be successful. How secure is Ten Hag after his contract was only extended? OB, again, so in terms of the contract, that was a decision that was taken prior to both of our arrivals. But as I said before, we're very happy with that decision. Eric has our full backing, and we have worked very closely together, as Dan said before, in this transfer window. We're going to continue working very closely with him to help him get the best results out of the team. So he's still backed if there's a bad run of results. OB, do we still believe in Eric? Absolutely. We think Eric is the right coach for us, and we're fully backing him. Dan, is it not odd inheriting a coach? DA, well, it happened at Newcastle with Eddie Howe, it happened at West Brom, Tony Mowbray was in place. Very rarely do you go into a job as a sporting director and there's no manager in place, so you had no say in keeping him. DA, I didn't start until July 1st, so none whatsoever. All I can do is reiterate what I remember saying. I've really enjoyed working with Eric for the last 8 weeks. I see my job is to support him in every way I possibly can, and whether that's operationally, whether that's with recruitment, whether that's with medical, whether that's with psychology, whether that's training ground flow, it's just to take as much of that off him to allow him to fully focus on the training pitch and the match tactical plan to deliver success for Manchester United. Dan, you said signings aren't down to one man. Did you not consider drawing a line with recruitment this summer, as Eric had some sway under the previous regime, yet there is a continuation of that thread with Xerxes, De Ligt and Mazraoui? DA, again, I can't comment on what's happened previously. I don't know how they've made the decisions on players coming in. And I've already alluded to, it's a joined-up process. We looked at objective, subjective opinions and come up with the best possible solution we can to fill the positions we have identified. It is natural in the human nature to work with somebody you've worked with previously in all contexts, in all business contexts. I'm sure you guys have all done it as well. That is a natural sway because you know that person, because you know that player, but also we've signed a number of players this summer that haven't worked with Eric previously. Ugarte, he'd never worked with Xerxes, and you can't say just because he's Dutch. He knows him. You would put the whole of the English market to me. He's not worked with him before, he's worked with Matthijs and Naus previously. As I've said before, they were both on our radar, and it's a joined-up decision on who comes in and out of this football club. How much research do you go into on new signings? DA, well, it's difficult within the rules because technically you're not allowed to speak to the player before you agree a fee. So if you're recruiting for a head of scouting, or a head of medical, or whatever, you can interview that person and try to get to know them over a number of times. So what you tend to try and do is take as many references as possible, so I've always done that. I've worked in organizations where you do that. It might be a previous teammate, a previous coach, a national team coach, a physio, somebody who might know him or her from a previous role, as much due diligence as you possibly can, and that goes into a number of areas. Whether that's medical record, whether that's personality, whether that's ability to learn, whether the ability to deal with the pressure of a club like Manchester United. But you never truly know what you've got, staff or player, until you start to work with them. How important was it to keep Bruno Fernandes? DA, we had 32 transactions and there were 4 new contracts. Tom Heaton, Johnny Evans, Bruno, Toby Collier, I think, was slightly before my time. The outs, as well as the high-profile INS as well. Retaining your best talent, and Bruno, clearly, had an unbelievable season. He's been brilliant since he's been here. His game availability is fantastic. I hope I haven't jinxed that yet. Touches wood. His output is brilliant. His output on and off the pitch is really good as well. The influence he brings to the other players as captain, I can't speak highly enough of him. It was a crucial part of the transfer strategy as well.